Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Greenberg, and I am a psychology faculty member at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Dr. Kara Metz is our session co-chair. We are pleased to welcome you to this Applying Culture of Care to Formerly Justice-Involved Students with Teresa Leary-Handy, Jennifer Robinson, Sarah Sutler-Cohen, Stephanie Adams, Sherry Schwartz, and Matthew Galloway. Sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences and facilitated by the UAGC Department of Behavioral Sciences. We hope you enjoy the session. Some of you know our presenters, so please feel free to use the chat to join me in welcoming them. The chat is also a great place to post your questions, and we will address them as time permits near the end of the session. Matthew, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Galloway. I'm a student care manager here at UAGC, and I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today for a session on applying the culture of care to formerly justice-involved UAGC students. As Paul said, please be active in the chat. We want engagement there. If you have questions, post them, talk to each other. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Before a quick overview of our agenda, I just wanted to pause and highlight our belief that this work group and session align most directly with the advocate pillar of the culture of care, and we are really happy to see so much interest in this topic. For anybody that was in with us just a few minutes before the session started, as Sherry was talking about, this is such a prevalent topic, not only for our students, but in general. So again, we're really happy that everybody is here with us today. So as far as what you can expect, we're going to celebrate Dr. Clifford Blizzard and his role in bringing this work group to life. We're going to talk about students who are formerly justice connected, share some classroom support strategies, and close with our next steps. And again, hopefully a little bit of time to answer some questions. So for those who joined our session during the Teaching and Learning Conference last year, this might be a bit of a repeat, but we wanted to share our background as both a tribute to Clifford and to help anyone here today or viewing the session later if recorded, understand really what called this group to action. So personally, I had only known of Clifford prior to the beginning of the work group back in June of 23, but hadn't had the opportunity to actually partner with him on anything. And it was at that time that I received outreach from him regarding a student he'd worked with previously and who'd contacted him just before he reached out to me with some really frustrating challenges that they were navigating. The student had been exceptional during their time at the university, and their outreach to Clifford was to share their frustration with ongoing challenges in securing employment despite being academically successful. It was not about qualification. The student continued to receive invitations to interview after applying, and even offers of employment after interviewing. But once that fact that the student had previously been incarcerated became known, everything that made that student a candidate of interest just seemed to be immediately overshadowed. And this is unfortunately not an isolated or uncommon experience for community members who are connected to the justice system. The student reached out to Clifford to share their experience and engage their network of allies while fighting to hold on to their dream that education would support their future success. And it's really no surprise that Clifford made such an impact on the student that he was someone they chose to reach out to as a partner in their success. And for those who have known Clifford for any amount of time, I think I can speak for everyone when I say that he cared about us. He helped people feel like they mattered. He seemed to have a talent for what I believe really is the culture of care, and that's believing in everyone's potential and empowering each student to achieve their academic goals. He brought genuine interest in others and a willingness to really give himself as support. He modeled authenticity, was quick to show up as an ally, and this is one of my favorite things, unoffended by barriers to progress while really maintaining that optimistic openness and interest in getting outside the box. I think a lot of the stories I've heard have just really highlighted that about him. So aligned with his love of nature and really a nurturing look at the world, this group began organically out of a meaningful connection between he and the student and his limitless interest in bettering our community, both now and in the future. So here we are today, really a growing group of stakeholders across multiple departments, and we've grown since we first introduced our work group during TLC, and we're answering a list of growing questions, working to increase awareness and dialogue about the impact of being personally or through someone else connected to the justice system, and to identify ways that we can become more inclusive and able to support this particular population of learners. So with that, Sherry, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. So I know we covered this at TLC a couple of months ago, but I thought it would be important to cover again. So who are formerly justice involved or formerly justice impacted? These terms are used interchangeably. Who are these students? So these are students who are at risk of being incarcerated, or who have been formerly incarcerated, or who have had a sibling, parent, or other loved one involved in the justice system, whether currently or formerly. These are students who have otherwise encountered law enforcement where that particular encounter has altered their life in some way, maybe didn't necessarily result in charges, but they've now had an experience that is public record, it's publicly available, that they have been stopped or they have been arrested, even if the charges were never filed or they were adjudicated not guilty, it's still out there and therefore can have a dire impact on their life. Also, justice involved and impacted students often face significant financial issues. Housing instability, food insecurity, they have difficulty finding employment. And in addition to needing help finding financial resources, emotional support is often needed after having been impacted by the justice system. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so why are formerly justice involved or formerly justice impacted students invisible? Well, because of the profound and pervasive stigma that arises from stereotypes of criminals and criminality when and in particular, those stereotypes as they correspond with the type of crime that the person has been arrested for, charged with, prosecuted for. And the stigma carries significant real-world consequences. For example, employers do prefer to hire people who don't have criminal records. This goes back to the stereotypes of criminals and criminality. If somebody has a criminal record, there's an automaticity in the stereotyping that says, well, this is somebody that can't be trusted, or this is somebody who does bad things, so they must be a bad person. Most rental communities run criminal background checks and many homeowners associations. So if this person, is in a position where they're able to own a home, many of these places run criminal background checks, and that will determine if you can live in that particular location. Also, the stigma can serve as a barrier to attaining a degree, such as getting financial aid, because with certain types of crimes, it is harder, if not impossible, to get financial aid, although that's getting better. But if you don't have a roof over your head and you can't pay the light bill, it's a little hard to think about furthering your education. So it's a barrier in that way. And then, of course, the social isolation. With the advent of the internet and Google, this information, all kinds of information about us, is readily available. And so many formerly justice involved individuals, formerly justice involved students in this context will isolate socially because they just don't want somebody to maybe get so interested that they're looking into their background. And formerly justice involved students need specialized support in academic settings. And I'm sorry, I don't know who I was supposed to turn it over to. I apologize.
That's okay, Sherry, it's me. No worries. When we have students in our courses, we rarely, if ever, ask students to self-identify their struggles. However, students might do this organically through a discussion post or a response to an announcement. Students may also send a private email letting you know that they were formerly justice involved or impacted, or have a partner or a relative who is formerly justice involved or impacted. This has come about in my course through a student who needed to attend a court to testify in a domestic violence situation, or from a student who was visiting a partner or other relatives in prison. While these explanations for why someone is late with work can seem like excuses on the surface, they tell us so much more about the student and their connection or adjacency to the justice system. Some students may self-identify as they would with anything else, or they may choose to not tell you anything. The bottom line is being prepared for when our students disclose that they are justice involved. So in our culture of care, we want to remember that the words we use matter, and dehumanizing an individual is the last thing we want to do. Just in our small group, even from the beginning when it was just a few of us with Clifford, we struggled with the words to use and what to call our group. We did quite a bit of research about this and had several discussions about the language we use. I'm adding a link to the chat right now. And this is the Words Matter document, and it's helpful not only for humanizing our justice-involved individuals, but thinking about how we structure our language to be person first, regardless of the situation. The first step in supporting our justice-involved or impacted students is monitoring ourselves to ensure for person-first language. Just as I say I have a daughter with level 1 autism versus I have an autistic daughter, I want to stay person first with our students who have been justice involved by simply saying they are justice involved versus they are an ex-con or an offender, etc. By using phrases such as justice involved or formerly justice involved or adjacent or justice impacted, we consider our students in the context of their lives instead of making the context the focus of their lives. We can denote that our students are somehow involved in this system without the justice system involvement being their identity. So the Words Matter document is a start for us to begin thinking about the language we use for all of our students, but especially for this specific group of students who we want to envelop into our supports. So please take some time to review this document when you have a moment. There are also some additional resources linked in that document that might be valuable for you.
Thanks, Jen. So I will be honest with you all. When I first remember hearing about Clifford's work in this arena, I was thinking I didn't really have a connection to it. I do have a personal connection to having someone who was formerly involved with the justice system, but I didn't see that in my classroom until I read between the lines of a student's discussion post. And I realized I was missing some important information that could help me better relate to and understand my students. I realized that sometimes when a student is vaguely describing something in a description, in a post, a discussion post, that they are describing a life experience that they may not want to share too many details, and we think they're not providing the context, right? And then other times I noticed that students are boldly speaking about their time in prison or jail, and they are subsequent and any kind of subsequent mental health or drug treatment programs. And then I've also noticed that some students speak loudly about, college being their saving grace. And in all of these cases, it can be really hard to know what to say or how to respond. But I'd like to share a little bit about what I've done. First, if a student notes that they had a difficult experience but does not give the details, like Jen mentioned, I don't pry. I give praise to their resilience. I link it to soft skills. And in my course that I teach, Gen 101, I say, you're going to talk, this is a great time for you to think about what you're going to say in week 4, which is when we talk about soft skills. And then I also ask them to see the lessons that they've learned from their experiences in those important moments that they could share, that they're comfortable sharing. I let them know that they are never the worst thing that they've ever said, done, or had done to them. I say that a lot. I say that in emails. I say that in my announcements because I want them to hear that, because sometimes we internalize those experiences as being defining, self-defining. I reinforce and I know how hard it is to start college. And in the entry point course, I check in with them early and often. When students openly share their experiences, I like to add an additional layer to what I shared a few moments ago. I let them know that I'm proud of them for opening up and sharing their experiences. And I let them know that we can all learn from one another. And when I know directly that they've had an experience, I'll share a resource that Matt's team has created. The biggest piece is I want them to know that I'm not shocked. That I'm not shocked by anything that they're saying or that they're bringing into the classroom. I let them know this by saying it's part of their story. I let them know this by telling them it's not their complete story. And finally, when they're speaking about college being their saving grace, I make sure that they are aware of all of their resources. I also keep my eye on these students because I don't want them to be disappointed in themselves as the course progresses, because they may hit a speed bump, and for them that can reach failure, but it's not. It's a speed bump. It's just a bump in the road. It's not college is their saving grace. It's the opportunity. And every day we are presented with opportunities, and I want them to know that, as with anything, they have to make a plan and then work the plan. So in all cases, I affirm their resilience, I support their sharing, or I support their decision not to share, and I offer up resources. And you will be happy to know that UAGC offers protocols on this, and there's a QR code. Anyone who has seen me present knows I love QR codes. So there's a QR code that you can scan for some of those resources. Sometimes I share my personal experience having a family member who's been impacted by the justice system, and I can authentically empathize with them. However, I do that selectively and in situations that I deem appropriate. But as you can see, none of what I have done requires that you have an experience with the justice system or that you share your family's experiences. Years ago, when I was a social worker, I used to work Saturday mornings in a methadone clinic counseling drug addicts, and I did not have to use heroin to be an effective counselor. However, I was able to share some experiences coping with family members who struggle with addiction. So it does require a keen ear and an awareness of the resources we have for our students, and a willingness to look beyond a student's experiences with the penal system, which really, truthfully, aren't our concern. We're trying to help them move forward to the future. One of the ways you can build your own personal cultural competency is to familiarize yourself with all of the UAGC resources that you have available, but you can also deepen your understanding of that reentry experience for these students. And this workshop is the beginning, and we have resources to share with you at the end. One of my favorite resources is the UAGC Student Support Resource Guide. In this guide, you can find scenarios, you can find resources. And for any student reentering, they're going to come with a little bit of some stuff in their red wagon that's going to be full of issues around housing insecurity, food insecurity. So give them the resources for the student advocacy line, the helpline that can assist them. Finally, if you are working at UAGC, reach out to your program chair, your faculty support specialist, your department chair. All of these people are here to help you navigate these waters. And if you need help finding these people, you can typically find your program chair in Workday. In addition, you can search the intranet for our UAGC homepage, and you can find the program chair listed there. And if you can't, I'm happy to help you after the session is over. Next slide, please. So briefly, how do I build the bridge with students who have these experiences? I work to normalize their experience in the classroom. I make them the expert of their experiences, I've mentioned to you, and I encourage them to find the learning. I directly express my compassion and praise, and a lot of the times I do this through memes and like little sayings in my responses to them. I spend my time connecting their experiences to the lesson in the course. For example, in my Gen 101 course, I connect them to, like I said, week 4, where we're talking about growth mindset and soft skills. And I help them see their connections, and I help them keep their future focus. I help them stay focused on their future and not the past. And these are my references, the next slide for these images. And then I think Matt and I are going to talk. Matt, do you want to start off though?
Yeah, no problem. So I wanted to pause here just to talk about 2 resources specifically. The first is, and again, thank you, Teresa, for teeing this up, the Student Advocate Helpline, which I oversee. The helpline is a university resource that staff and faculty can reach out to on behalf of students experiencing distress, or that students can actually reach out to directly for support. Our helpline team, and I'm going to use this as a chance to shout out our 2 amazingly talented student advocates, Dr. Nicole Villarreal and Kenya Edwards. They support students navigating hardships such as loss of housing or unmet basic needs, intimate partner violence, substance use or misuse, interest in health and wellness resources, and more. We provide crisis intervention and case management, brief counseling, and support with identifying local resources. So, as has been shared, the types of impacts, and this is taken from the National Reentry Resource Center and the National Institute of Justice, they really highlight the needs of this population and common reentry challenges related to housing, employment, access to mental and physical health care. So given the role our team plays, it's not a surprise that we get connected with students navigating impact from a prior connection to the justice system. whether themselves or a family member or friend. And while not always a part of maybe the disclosure that prompts the referral to our team, once we're connected and we're talking about areas of impact, students do share their lived experiences. And so if present, the barriers that they're encountering related to this particular topic. And I share all this to say, please do send students our way. And you can submit an online care report, which is linked in through these resources if you access the QR codes. But as we've talked about as well, really listen to what is being shared, as not every reported connection to the justice system is going to require a helpline referral. And one of the best ways I think we can all live the culture of care is by taking time to listen to the disclosure of each student individually and engage them regarding their unique needs. And that includes kind of the specific and intentional connection to resources. The second one I wanted to call out is our career services team. And that's not listed specifically in the resource or on the slides. Career services is a great team to engage when employment and the connection to the justice system collide. And while this team can't guarantee employment, when a student schedules an appointment in Handshake with their career services advisor and shares their concern related to the disclosure of a conviction or incarceration, there's an opportunity for students to discuss their experience and strategize for navigating this barrier to move forward. And I saw the question in the chat, do we have a list of employers that hire students who have a connection to the justice system? I'm not sure if that has been responded to. I know we don't have a specific list of that, but that our career services team, and Rebecca is in the session, I believe, as well as a part of this work group, is looking for opportunities to, in our career fairs, ensure we're including employers that meet that criteria. For staff and faculty, you can also access the career coaching, formerly Justice Involved Student Job Aid, and that was updated since the kickoff of our work group. It's designed to effectively structure coaching sessions with students who may be impacted by the justice system. And it's important to remember that each student situation and job search challenges are different and unique to that individual. So it takes that individual career coaching appointment to discover the student's unique situation. UAGC Career Services takes a coaching approach to help students form a realistic outlook on their career choices and help the students create proactive strategies for tackling obstacles related to involvement with the justice system. And Rebecca, if I misspoke about anything career services related, definitely correct me in the chat. But I'm going to hand it back over to you, Teresa, if there's anything else you wanted to note just related to these two particular resources you've listed here.
Yes, thank you. I just want everyone to know that knowing you're not alone and that you have resources to support you is important to UAGC as an institution. We have a strong faculty affairs department in place with a faculty help box on the landing page of the UAGC intranet page for faculty. And we want you to know that you're not alone. So I mentioned the Student Support Resource Guide. We also have something called the Gen 101 OER or Open Education Resources, and that's located in our UAGC hub. That hub is important because you can also find articles that you can send to students if you hear or see that they're having an issue. The Gen 101 OER page is a landing spot for these resources, and it's public facing, and that means that these resources are available to them even if they're not in that entry point course. There are vodcasts, there are tools, there are resources, and we encourage everyone to check out that page and see if there's any way that you can connect those resources to students who may need a little nudge or some support. Sarah, I think you have some interesting things to share with us about what you've done in the classroom.
Thank you, Teresa. Thanks, everybody. So I am the program chair for the Bachelor's in Sociology here at UAGC. And one of the things that I've been working on in the last year since I came on board is to transform the program overall into a applied program, applied sociology, which basically means like, what theoretical premises can we take to the streets? When people ask me what I want to do, I say in one sentence, I want to create boots on the ground sociologists to go out and make change in their community so that it can spill out into the rest of the world. And so one of the things that I've done is create an assignment that helps formerly incarcerated people. So people being released out of county jail or being released from prison are often released with no resources, nowhere to go, maybe a bus ticket, but maybe not, no follow-up services, no housing services, no food resources, no job services, and it feeds into recidivism. And just a couple of things to give you an idea of what the curricular backstory was, it relates back to what Sherry talked about around the stigma that attaches to people. So this stigma, we're all aware of it, but what happens to people who are formerly incarcerated or formerly justice involved in any way is that it becomes a lived trauma in that person's body. And so it's sort of that whole body keeps the score, right? You just you hold on to that trauma. It turns into shame. Shame gets confused with guilt. Shame binds with anger. Shame binds with fear and these different things. And it comes out in very particular ways. So it comes out in these shame-based behaviors or emotional responses. So as instructors, it's our job to have a kind of level of awareness. So for example, Teresa being able to read between the lines, right? Kind of seeing it right there when, having that level of awareness. The other thing is, I think that's really important is a lot of people that are formerly justice involved are never formally justice involved. And I think we say that word a lot because we're talking about people who are no longer incarcerated. But once you are incarcerated or once you're involved in the justice system, it stays with you. And sometimes it stays with you legally, but it also stays with you emotionally. So just full disclosure, and I debated on whether I want to share this, but I do have a history of being involved in the justice system as a juvenile. And so, decades later, it's still with me because I, panicked about whether I even wanted to share that, but this is a relevant space. So a lot of students want that cultural and social reintegration or just integration, but they also get defensive and also don't want, they want their experience respected while also not wanting anybody to know because they just want to sort of like fold right back in. And so these are just nuances to be aware of. So the developmental process of creating this assignment was having a hyper awareness of the possibility, very strong possibility that students in sociology or students taking sociology classes, because some of these courses are some of the more popular electives, is that some of these students might be just released, they might be on probation, they might have a partner or a child or an aunt or an uncle or a parent that's involved or that's in prison or in jail or in and out or whatever. And so I had to write this assignment very carefully because on the one hand, I wanted to help people build awareness to students, but also to be the kind of assignment that someone who is formerly justice involved or recently released can engage with without feeling threatened, without really like having a community feel with the assignment. And so the expectation, that's really like what the expectations of this was to make an assignment, create awareness, but also to create a voice, a channel for a voice for students who are somehow involved in the carceral system. And you can go to the next slide. So these will be made available to people. I put the whole assignment in for people to take a look at. It should launch, I think it's going to launch in May, the Social Problems and Social Action course. And I think this is also the one I put in an assignment that's a support kit for people who have been involved in trafficking. So this is really an assignment that asks students to consider what it would be like to get out of county or get out of prison and have no resources. You can go to the next slide now. These are just a list of the readings, and those are all hyperlinked so everybody can check them out. You can go to the next slide. And these are the challenges upon release. So what are the challenges? And I already named a couple of them, and a lot of these are in the documents, the materials for students. I rely heavily on the Marshall Project, and I would encourage everybody who doesn't know about the Marshall Project to go and check it out and give them money and donate. It's a wonderful, intense, beautiful group of people that do hardcore journalism are all around the carceral system, and I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for the Marshall Project even existing. I've done work with juveniles as well in graduate school, so this is really personal to me because I know what it's like and how it impacts families and everybody around us, and then how it just carries on through adulthood. Anyway, students are asked to examine the resources and prepare a kit, a toolkit that people can use. Next slide. So they're asked to develop community solutions, not just sort of a handout, because I think that's really important. A lot of the assumptions that we have about people who are involved in the carceral system is that they just need handouts and then they'll be fine. But it really does, the community has to get involved. So students are asked to figure out ways that their community. So I really try to focus, try to get students really to look at their own community and not that community over there, or that community over there, but their community. What can they do? And that's often a question I have of students. What can you do today to start a conversation about racial justice? What can you do today to start a conversation about restorative justice? What can you do today to find or identify or see something differently that you might not have seen before, where there's trafficking going around the corner from where you live, probably, because it's that insidious. And so this assignment is really about creating an acute awareness for students and also for people to be able to be seen where they might not have been before. And you can go to the next slide. This is the support kit. And so this is the thing I'm most proud of, and I can't wait to teach this. This is one of the courses I teach regularly, and I'm so excited to teach this. So the bonus, if you go to the bottom, the option is actually to take this a step further, include your kit in a letter to your local legislator or nonprofit. So students are actually asked to go and do something with this work. A lot of the assignments that are being created in the sociology program right now are project-based. So these project-based assignments are actually assignments that students are encouraged to take out of here with them and to go put to work. So this one is very special to me, and I'm just so excited that I was able to create this without any muss or fuss. In fact, with a lot of encouragement from the university. And I really just want to take a moment to acknowledge that this is a university that isn't just populated with people like us on this panel that support students, but we actually have a very robust and strong administration that supports this kind of work, which is very difficult to find. And so I want to just take a moment and recognize the people in administration that do support us. I have been encouraged to do this work by administration. And I think that says a lot about UAGC as a university that's looking out for its students. And I think that's all. I think that's the last one. Yeah. Thank you.
So basically, we wanted to share some next steps after what we've already done. We want to consolidate all the resources that we've shared with you in this PowerPoint and in the QR codes into one single location, hopefully a PDF or maybe a website, something like that. But that way everyone can get everything all in one spot. We want to keep providing resources and guidance to advisors and work with career advisors more, as Matt stated. And I'm in the development team, so we're going to look into creating some professional development educational material for faculty in the future, hopefully. You can go to the next slide. I have posted a link in the chat just in case you're not familiar with QR codes. Just in case, but we have shared some resources that you can find outside of the university on this list. There's links to criminal and DMV expungement guidance there for formerly justice involved students. There's links for help and resources for reentry programs, such as the National Reentry Resource Center.org and helpforfelons.org. There's links to sites that assist with finding jobs and career opportunities after incarceration, such as the careeronestop.org, which provides specific job search information for ex-offenders, and resumebuilder.com, which provides help with creating resumes, but also gives tips for getting hired, financial aid resources for people with criminal records, and FAQs for attending college or trade schools. There's a formerly incarcerated college graduate network called ficgn.org that's listed there. And there's also several sites that provide information assistance to formerly justice involved students. Or you might want to just check them out because they're very interesting. There's perseverenow.org, which offers a one-year programming class for incarcerated individuals, which includes life skill classes, support, and even transitional housing. There's beyondthebox.com, which seeks to educate the public on how college applications ask if someone has been convicted of a crime and influence policy that is targeted to create a more inclusive admissions project. And then what Sarah mentioned, the marshallproject.org is listed, which is a popular news organization that researches and reports about the U.S. criminal justice system as a whole and seeks for reform. And there's a NASPA knowledge community, which is dedicated to families, partners, and friends of formerly incarcerated students. And lastly, there are a few videos you can watch relating to this topic, such as the 13th feature on Netflix, as well as some further research articles on rethinking incarceration and prison abolition. So there's a lot of resources listed. You can share them with others as well if you're familiar with anyone that might need them. Check them out if you can. And so now we'd like to open the floor for questions. So feel free to type any questions in the Q&A feature in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself. We'd be happy to answer them. Sarah, did you have some questions that you had?
One of them was about a list of, I think it was a list of employers that are willing to hire formerly justice impacted involved individuals.
Yeah, and then Matt had responded to that. I think we don't have one, but I know that is a thing that exists, and the Marshall Project has done some work around that.
Also, in most communities throughout the United States, even in rural communities, although there's less jobs available, there are federally funded entities, organizations, for lack of a better word, called Career Source. And they have an entire branch in each county that's devoted to reentry, helping people helping these individuals, if they're coming out of prison, get a driver's license or a state ID, because without that, you can't apply for any kind of welfare or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then helping them figure out what skills they did acquire while incarcerated that can be presented to employers as something that would be useful. And so Career Source in your community is a good place to start if you're looking for resources and some education on what's out there.
One of the things that we talked about is this idea of sort of like the stigma attached to the carceral people that have been in the carceral system or wind up somehow tied to it, and how that's sort of carried out, and to have a need for a list of employers to me is like, I don't want that, right? Like, so how, I'll ask everybody here, what I ask students a lot is like, what can you do today to shift that gear? So what if we didn't need that? What needs to happen in terms of like having dialogue around folks that are involved in the carceral system? How do we shift that dialogue to make a list of employers that will hire them not needed? And I apologize, people get mad at me for the questions that I ask. But what can you do? I'll just ask everybody in the group that have attended, not us presenting, just pop it in the chat. What can y'all do today, right now, that can shift the conversation?
I was just going to say, I think that's a perfect question to take with us. And if you have thoughts, feel free to chat them in while we're closing, but continue to think about that, because that really is, I think, the point.
Thank you so much. Fantastic perspectives and resources. Thank you so much to Teresa, Jennifer, Sarah, Stephanie, Sherry, and Matt for your time and insights. This concludes our Applying the Culture of Care to Formerly Justice-Involved Students. Thank you to all of our viewers for joining us. We hope you found the conversation inspiring. I know I did. On behalf of the Department of Behavioral Sciences and the University of Arizona Global Campus, thank you, and please have a great rest of your day. We have posted the next sessions in the chat for your benefit.